You don't seduce a woman with compliments. You seduce her with contrast, with emotional chaos, with psychological polarity that makes her feel everything she didn't know she craved. And the truth is, most men don't have the guts to pull this off. But the men who do, they don't chase women, women chase them relentlessly. Now listen carefully, because what I'm about to share isn't for the average nice guy who's still trapped in the illusion that honesty, availability, and constant validation are what make a woman fall. No, what I'm about to share is for the man who's ready to operate on a deeper, darker, more primal level. A level where you don't just attract a woman, you embed yourself in her mind. You become the thought she can't silence, the curiosity she needs to satisfy, the riddle she keeps replaying long after you've left the room. Psychological seduction is not about pretending. It's about understanding human behavior so deeply that your actions trigger her unconscious responses, her emotional reflexes, her buried fantasies. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how the guys who keep women hooked are rarely the ones who try too hard? They're not the ones texting "good morning" every day or buying gifts in hopes of being appreciated. They're the ones who make her feel uncertain, the ones who know exactly when to lean in and exactly when to pull back. They disrupt her patterns. They confuse her in just the right dose. And that confusion, it breeds obsession, mystery. One of the most brilliant minds in seduction theory called this emotional pacing. Robert Greene in The Art of Seduction calls it strategic withdrawal. The idea is simple. Create tension by giving her a taste of what she wants, then disappear long enough for her mind to obsess over it. It's not manipulation, it's psychological craftsmanship. You see, a woman doesn't fall in love because you're always there. She falls in love because you leave gaps. Gaps that her imagination fills in, gaps where she questions, wonders, fantasizes. The man who triggers her imagination is the man who dominates her emotional landscape. And that's what most guys never get. They think consistency means safety. But in the realm of attraction, consistency is boring. Predictability is the killer of seduction. A woman needs to feel uncertain to feel alive. And a man who can create emotional unpredictability without being toxic is the man she keeps coming back to, over and over again. Now let's break down a very specific psychological principle that will change the way you interact with women forever: the intermittent reinforcement effect. This comes from behavioral psychology, and it's one of the most powerful drivers of addiction. Studies have shown that people, and women especially, become far more obsessed with a stimulus when the reward is unpredictable. Think about slot machines. If you got a reward every single time you pulled the lever, you'd get bored. But if the reward comes sometimes randomly and in bursts of intensity, you get addicted. That's how casinos make billions, and that's how you make her emotionally hooked. When you apply this to dating, it looks like this. Sometimes you reply fast, sometimes you don't reply at all. Sometimes you're playful and flirty, sometimes you're cold and indifferent. Not out of anger, not to hurt, but to create emotional rhythm, emotional complexity, because that rhythm becomes addictive. Here's what makes it so effective. Women don't fall for what's nice, they fall for what's emotionally engaging. A man who knows how to use emotional push-pull triggers dopamine, and dopamine is the same neurochemical responsible for addiction. When you pair that chemical high with moments of silence, moments of ambiguity, you train her mind to associate you with emotional intensity. Let me make this crystal clear. You don't need to be rich, tall, or famous, but you do need to understand how her mind works. Women are not turned on by logic. They are seduced through emotion, through perception, through mystery. And if you can create a psychological loop that she can't exit, she'll crave you in ways she can't explain even to herself. I'll give you a real-world example. There was a client of mine, a quiet, introverted guy who had been chasing this woman for months. Flowers, dinners, heartfelt texts. Nothing worked. Then I gave him one piece of advice. Disappear. Cold. Out of nowhere. No explanation, no drama. Just vanish. 3 days later, she blew up his phone, begging for attention, asking what she did wrong. Her mind couldn't process the emotional break in pattern. Why? Because when the attention is constant, it becomes noise. But when you remove it suddenly, it becomes a vacuum, and a woman's emotional system hates vacuums. She needs to fill it with something, and when she doesn't have you, she fills it with thoughts of you. This is not cruelty, this is understanding human psychology. Now here's where most guys mess up. They hear this and start playing games, but games are fake, and women can smell fake. This isn't about being fake. This is about being intentional, strategic, masculine, grounded, calm in your power. You don't react, you design. That's the essence of dark psychology and seduction. It's not about lying or pretending. It's about creating carefully engineered experiences that pull her into your frame, your world, your emotional atmosphere. When she's in that space, she stops thinking about other men. She stops comparing, because no one else makes her feel that chaotic fire, that magnetic danger, that emotional roller coaster that somehow makes her feel more alive than any stability ever could. And here's the twist that makes all of this even more potent. It's not just about how you interact with her, it's about the frame you hold over reality itself. Because seduction starts long before you say a single word. It begins with the energy you radiate. And in dark psychology, we call this framing dominance. Framing dominance is the art of controlling the lens through which others interpret reality. And here's what most men don't understand. Women don't just fall for who you are. They fall for the story you make them feel a part of. If your energy says, "I'm the prize, I'm the mystery, you're entering my world," she adjusts herself to that narrative. She will subconsciously shift her behavior, filter her expectations, and crave your validation. Not because you asked for it, but because your frame made it irresistible. This is why two men can say the exact same words to a woman, and she'll only feel attraction for one of them. One is seen as just another guy trying to impress her. The other? He's the source of a magnetic, unpredictable experience. She doesn't just want him, she wants in on his energy. You create this not by bragging, not by showing off, but by anchoring yourself in deep inner certainty. Women feel that. They feel when a man doesn't need them. And paradoxically, that's when they start chasing him. Because neediness kills fantasy, and fantasy is the lifeblood of seduction. Let's talk about another psychological technique that works on an unconscious level, the implanted thought loop. This tactic borrows from NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and it's one of the most subtle but powerful tools in the seducer's arsenal. Here's how it works. Instead of trying to impress her, you embed a thought in her mind that loops long after your conversation is over. For example, you say something like, "Isn't it crazy how sometimes you meet someone and for no logical reason, you can't stop thinking about them?" You say it while holding eye contact. You say it like you're just making a random observation. But what you're really doing is planting the seed. Now her subconscious takes that thought and begins to associate it with you because you're the one who said it. You're the one who introduced that idea while she was emotionally engaged, and the mind attaches that suggestion to the nearest stimulus. You. This is not hypnosis, it's emotional engineering. You're guiding the direction of her inner dialogue without ever telling her what to think. You're not telling her to be obsessed with you, you're guiding her to wonder why she keeps thinking about you. That's psychological elegance, that's dark seduction. And here's the next layer of depth, reverse projection. This is a tactic where you reflect her own hidden desires back to her without making it obvious. You become a mirror, but a seductive one. A mirror that shows her the version of herself she secretly wants to explore. For example, you don't say, "You're so sexy." That's generic, every guy says that. Instead, you lower your voice and say, "You know what I like about you? You pretend to be so innocent, but there's something a little wild in your eyes. I can see it, and I like it." Now, watch her reaction, because what you've done is awaken a part of her she keeps hidden. And when a woman feels seen, not just for what she shows the world, but for what she secretly fantasizes about, she bonds not with her mind, but with her soul. Because you're not just another man hitting on her, you're the one who unlocked something primal. And primal always overrides logical. In psychology, this ties into the concept of shadow integration. Carl Jung spoke about the shadow as the part of ourselves we repress. In women, this includes sexual hunger, wildness, unpredictability. Society teaches her to be composed. You, as the seducer, invite her to be unfiltered, and that invitation, if done right, is irresistible. Now pay attention, because what I'm about to say is next level. There's a reason most men fail at seduction, even after learning these techniques. It's because they apply them without presence, without embodiment. They try to use tricks, but their energy betrays their desperation. You can't fake stillness, you can't fake masculine polarity. That's why your internal world matters more than your words. If you truly want to play with her mind, you need to own yours first. And this brings us to the concept of psychological dissonance, a powerful trigger in the female brain. When you behave in ways that contradict her expectations, her brain lights up. She can't file you in a box. That uncertainty makes her pay more attention. She becomes hyper-aware of everything you do, and that attention fuels attraction. For example, you're warm with her one moment, intense, playful, and then suddenly you shift. You get serious, focused. You talk about something deep, like death, or purpose, or heartbreak. That tonal shift destabilizes her perception of you. Now you're not just the fun guy, you're a complex man, a man she can't figure out, a man who feels like a storm hiding under calm waters. And women are magnetized by storms. The greatest seducers in history all had this in common. Casanova, Don Juan, even modern seduction artists like Zan Perrion and Nick Sparks. They don't seduce with tricks, they seduce with psychological contrast, emotional gravity, by embodying both light and dark in the right dosage. She feels safe with them, but also excited. She feels desired, but never fully in control. She feels powerful, but a little vulnerable. And that cocktail, that emotional instability, that's what makes her addicted. Because here's what no one tells you. Addiction to a man doesn't come from love. It comes from volatility, from the emotional spike of not knowing what's next. And if you can give her that, she won't need to be convinced. She'll crave you. She'll fantasize about you. She'll surrender. And all of it begins in her mind. There's a way to seduce without even speaking, without a single word, without touching, without texting. A way that reaches her nervous system before her mind even knows what's happening. And it starts with non-verbal dominance. You walk into a room, and the first thing she feels isn't your looks or your outfit. It's your energy. It's how your body speaks. A man who understands this doesn't need lines. He doesn't need to prove. He enters slow, shoulders low, chin steady, gaze grounded, not scanning the room, but owning the room. Because here's the truth. In seduction, posture is perception, and perception is power. Women are biologically wired to pick up microsignals of leadership and security through body language. So when you enter a space with calm detachment and decisive movements, she feels it in her gut. She might not know why she's suddenly alert, but her body has already begun to tune into you. That's why eye contact is one of the most psychologically intimate acts you can perform without touch. Most men either avoid it or overdo it. The seducer uses it sparingly, strategically, and always from a grounded core. You look, then you withdraw. You hold, then you blink slowly. You let her feel that she's being seen but not dominated. That tension, that space between your eyes and hers, becomes charged. And here's where it gets interesting. In dark psychology, there's a concept called symbolic association. This is where the mind attaches meaning to things that aren't logically connected, but are emotionally charged. You can use this to condition her mind to associate specific triggers with you. Let me explain with an example. Imagine you always wear a specific cologne, one that's rare. Every time she sees you, smells it on you, her body feels the emotional energy of your presence. You don't mention it, you just wear it consistently. After enough interactions, that scent becomes a symbol. And later, days, weeks, even months, if she smells it on someone else or in the air, her body responds. Her mind thinks of you. It's not rational, it's emotional anchoring. This works with music, phrases, even colors. You use subtle repetition of a stimulus in emotionally intense moments. That's the secret. Emotional intensity is the glue. If you create a moment of intimacy, unpredictability, or passion, and pair it with a symbol, her brain fuses the two. You become a mental shortcut, a loaded image, a trigger. Now, let's take this even further. Another advanced concept in seduction psychology is calibrated emotional denial. Most guys operate in extremes. Either they give her too much too fast, or they pull back completely. But the true seducer masters selective emotional withholding. That means you don't shut down, you simply never give her full certainty. For instance, she asks, "Do you miss me?" And instead of saying yes or no, you pause, smile slightly and say, "What do you think?" Now her mind starts spinning. She searches for signals. She replays past conversations. She gets emotionally invested in finding meaning. And that investment becomes attraction. Remember this, a woman doesn't fall for what she knows. She falls for what she's trying to figure out. This is how you create emotional tension loops. It's a psychological spiral where each interaction leaves her with more questions than answers. Not because you're being vague, but because you're unpredictable, unclassifiable. She can't place you in a category. You're not just a friend, not just a flirt, not just a challenge. You're all of them, and none of them. That's the essence of what makes you unforgettable. And while we're here, let's talk about sexual tension without touch. Most men confuse sexual energy with physical aggression. But true sexual tension is created through restraint, through delay, through the subtle art of intensifying without releasing. You sit close but don't lean in. You look at her lips but don't kiss. You speak slowly but leave sentences unfinished. You create silence in the middle of a story. You make her wait, not out of cruelty, but because the mind eroticizes what it can't fully have. The great poet Rumi once wrote, "Don't seek love, instead become the magnet to which love has no choice but to respond." And that's exactly what you do here. You don't chase excitement, you become the container for it. You don't initiate the sexual moment, you engineer the tension that makes her crave it. This is where presence meets polarity. Masculine presence is grounded, rooted. It doesn't rush, it doesn't fidget. It watches, feels, waits. While feminine energy flows, changes, reacts, you stay still. And that stillness creates gravity. A man who can hold sexual tension without collapsing into it becomes dangerous, irresistibly so. Because he's showing her, without words, that he has control. Not over her, but over himself, and that's what makes her surrender. And now we arrive at one of the most forbidden techniques in dark seduction, emotional framing reversal. You flip the psychological script. Instead of trying to impress her, you position her as the one trying to win you. This is delicate and only works when you're already radiating self-worth. Here's how it works. Instead of saying, "I hope you like me," you say, "I'm still figuring out if you're my type." Not with arrogance, but with playful detachment. Now you've reversed the pressure. She feels the emotional imbalance. She starts qualifying herself. She begins trying to earn your approval. And the moment a woman starts trying to win you, you've already won. This is a law of seduction. Whoever is qualifying is chasing. The more she tries to prove something to you, the more psychologically invested she becomes. The more invested she becomes, the more emotionally open she gets. And that emotional openness, that's your gateway to influence. Not because you manipulated her, but because you orchestrated the experience. Because you understood how her mind works better than she does. And that is the mark of a true seducer. There's a level of seduction most men will never reach. Not because it's hidden, but because it requires mastery of something far more dangerous than a pickup line. Your own mind. To seduce a woman by playing with her thoughts isn't about tricking her. It's about awakening the parts of her psyche that no man has ever dared touch. It's about knowing how to shape emotional experiences, how to create subtle tension, how to activate dormant fantasies without ever needing to explain yourself. And once you learn how to do that, you don't just get her attention, you live in her head. You echo in her memory. You become the symbol she can't erase. Because in the end, women don't remember men who gave them everything. They remember the men who made them feel everything. Men who disrupted their emotional patterns. Men who challenged their self-image. Men who forced them to look at their own desires in the mirror and realize they want more intensity, more depth, more mystery. That's where you come in. The man who doesn't just seduce with words but with presence. The man who doesn't beg for validation, but offers a psychological experience that haunts her in the best way possible. And if you've made it this far, it means you're not like the rest. You're one of the few men who are willing to go beyond surface-level advice to explore the darker, more powerful truths about attraction and the human mind. Now imagine something. What would your life look like if you actually applied this? What would happen if you stopped chasing and started pulling her in with your silence, your mystery, your energy? What if women started seeing you as the one they can't figure out? You already have the blueprint. Now it's time to use it. But before you go, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below telling me which part of this video hit you hardest, which psychological tactic you're going to try first. And if you want me to break down more high-level elite seduction techniques, ones they don't teach in mainstream dating advice, let me know. Your interaction isn't just for the algorithm, it's fuel for this movement. So if you found value in this, hit that like button like a man who knows what he wants. Subscribe because what's coming next is even darker, deeper, and more dangerous, in all the right ways. And share this video with another man who needs to wake up before it's too late. You now have the power to seduce her mind. Use it wisely.